So you're actually, as far as I understand, pro-capitalism,
Yes.
which is an interesting place to be. That's the thing that probably makes you center left and then still populist. You're full of beautiful contradictions, let's say this, which will be great to untangle. But what's the difference between corporatism and capitalism? Is there a
Yeah.
difference?
So I really believe in capitalism. I don't think that there's really a second choice. Where it gets super interesting is the distinction between capitalism and socialism, because that's not at all as clear as people think it is. And people often say socialism and communism as synonyms when they're not synonyms, right? And so I view it as there's basically four distinct areas. It's obviously a spectrum. Everything is a spectrum, right? On one end, you have communism on the left, and on the other end, you have corporatism on the right. Okay. And I would argue that capitalism is in the middle. And so, communism, we know, state owns all property. You're not allowed to have private property. So, I will piss off a lot of people in this show. And so, I'm asking for their patience. Please hear me out. And because don't worry, I'm going to piss off the other side too.
Great.
Okay. So communism makes no sense at all, totally opposed to human nature. It never works. It always evolves into dictatorship because it is not built for human nature. We're never going to act like that. It's not in our DNA. You could try to wish it into existence, and they have, and it never works. And it's because once you have almost no rules in terms of, we're all equal. And even though communism eventually winds up having an enormous amount of rules, right? It creates a power vacuum when you say, hey, there's no structure of power here, right? We're all equal. It's a flat line. One guy usually gets up because that's human nature and goes, I don't think so. I think if you're going to leave a power vacuum, I'm going to take that power vacuum.
That's actually a really interesting way to put it, because when everyone is equal, nobody is in power, and human nature is such that there's a will to power. So when you create a power vacuum, somebody's going to fill it. So the alternative is to have people in power, but there's a balance of power, and then there's like a democratic system that elects the people in power and keeps churning and rotating who's in power.
That is exactly it, Lex. You got it exactly right, in my opinion. Okay, so that's why communism never works and can never work. So it's an idea of like, we're all going to work as hard as we possibly can and take only what we need. Where? When has that ever happened in the history of humanity, right? We're just not built that way. So, okay, we can get into that debate with my friends on the left, etc. Now, corporatism is just as extreme and just as dangerous. And that is basically what we have in America now. What we have in America now, and this is another giant trick that the Matrix played on everybody, that they did a shell game, and all of a sudden extreme corporatists like Manchin and almost every Republican in the Senate are moderates. Oh my God, Mitch McConnell all of a sudden is a moderate, and et cetera. As long as you're not a populist. Populists are never moderate, okay? But if you love corporations and corporate tax cuts and everything in favor of corporations, you're magically called a moderate when you actually, according to the polling, have super extreme positions that the American people hate. And by the way, that's part of the reason for the rise of Trump. We can come back to that, okay? But the second shell game is taking out capitalism, putting in corporatism, but still calling it capitalism. Okay, so what is corporatism? It is when corporations slowly take over the system and create monopoly and oligopoly power. So that snuffs out equality of opportunity. So how do they do that? When people say the system is rigged, they oftentimes can't explain it that well. And then mainstream media goes, oh, you sound conspiratorial. Rigged. Yeah, I wonder how. Yeah, super easy to explain it. Here's one of dozens of examples: carried interest loophole. So that is for hedge funds, private equity, the top people on Wall Street. That's part of their income. They get 2 and 20, right? So 2% is a flat fee no matter what happens to the fund, and 20% of the profits of the fund goes back to the people who invested it. It's not their money. It's not their investment. what they're getting is actually just income and should be taxed at the highest rate. But it's because of this loophole, it's taxed at a much lower rate, at around 20%. So do you know at what income level you go above 20% if you're a regular Joe? It's at $84,000 a year. So these billionaires are getting the same tax rate as people making $84,000 a year. It's unbelievably unfair. And that's corporatism taking over and starting to rig the rules. I'm going to pay less taxes. You're going to pay more taxes. Okay. So again, I can give you dozens of those examples. So, and mergers so that they get to oligopoly power. That's how you rig a system, lowering the corporate tax rates, making sure that there is no real minimum wage, making sure there's no universal health care. We all become indentured servants of corporations. They take away power from the average guy, give it to the most powerful people in the world. So, but the most important distinction, Lex, is that corporatism hates competition. It wants monopoly and oligopoly power, whereas capitalism loves competition and wants the free markets. And I remember, we started Young Turks back in 2002. So we've been around for 22 years, longest running daily show on the internet ever. And so we were pre-Iraq War, and the Iraq War starts, and Dick Cheney starts handing out no-bid contracts. I'm like, what part of capitalism is a no-bid contract? You can't negotiate drug prices. That's the most anti-free market thing I have ever heard. It's almost like communism for corporations. They get everything, you get nothing, right? So it's preposterous, it's awful, and it kills the free markets, and it's killing this country, and it is the main ideology and religion of the establishment.
Are all companies built the same here? So when you say corporatism, it seems like, just looking here at the list of by industry lobbyists, it seems like there are certain industries that are worse offenders than others, like pharmaceuticals, like insurance, oil and gas.
Yeah.
So it seems to me it feels wrong to just throw all companies into the same bucket of like they're all guilty.
No, they're not all guilty. So let's make a bunch of distinctions here. So first of all, are they quote unquote guilty? No, they're doing something that is logical and natural, right? So if you're a company, do you want to pay higher taxes or lower taxes? Of course you want to pay lower taxes, right? Do you want to have higher employee costs or lower employee costs? Of course you want lower employee costs, right? So, but the government needs to understand that and protect us from that power that they are going to exercise to get to those results. And if you think free markets is there is no government, you read it wrong. Go back and reread Adam Smith. He says you must protect against monopoly power. If you do not protect against monopoly power, you will have no free markets. And he's absolutely right. So second distinction is between small business and big business. That's why Republicans will always be like, oh, we're doing this for small business. That's why we got the biggest oil companies in the world, $30 billion in subsidies. What happened to small business, right? So I run a small business. And so if people were to say like, hey, maybe there should be exemptions for some of the regulations if your company has less than 5 employees, 10 employees, 50 employees, et cetera. There's some logic in that because businesses have different stages of growth and they have different interests and different needs in those stages of growth. And we want to facilitate small business growth because that's great for the economy, that's great for markets, freedom, et cetera. But the bigger corporations, even there's a third distinction. It isn't that there are certain industries that are worse. There's just that there are industries that are better at lobbying. So anyone who, like right now, number one donor in Washington, a lot of people make a mistake. They think it's APAC or they think it's the oil companies or the banks. No, it's Big Pharma. Okay. And who has the most power in this country? Big Pharma. So we can't even negotiate the drug prices. I mean, look, guys, think about it this way. That's like saying, okay, here's a bottle of water. And normally in the free market, that would cost about $1, right? And in the for Medicare, the drug companies come in and go, no, I'm not charging $1 for that water. I'm charging $100. And the government has to say, yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Of course, sir. We'll pay $100. That's why I compared it to communism, because I can't imagine anything more diametrically opposed to the free market than you, the consumer, have to pay whatever the hell a corporation charges. That's insanity, let alone the patents, let alone the fact that the American people pay for the research and then they make billions of dollars off of it and we get nothing but robbed by them. So it's about lobby power. Oil companies have huge lobby power. Defense contractors have huge lobby power. It's not that they're more evil. It's just that they have figured out the game better, and they have basically taken the influence they need to capture the market, capture the government, and snuff out all competition.
Well,
or
okay.
a lot of competition.
Figured out the game better. So I think a lot of companies are good at winning the right way by building better products, by making people happier with the work they're doing, and winning at the game of capitalism. And then there's other companies that win at the game of lobbying. And I just want to sort of draw that distinction because I think it's a small subset of companies that are playing the game of lobbying. It's like big pharma.
So, Lex, first of all, you have to set rules for what makes sense, not, oh, I don't like this industry, or I don't like this company, or, hey, this company is not doing that much lobbying at this point. They will later when they realize what's going on. So, for example, in my opinion, AIPAC has totally bought almost all of Congress. And so now other countries are going to wake up and go, wait, you could just buy the American government? So AIPAC is going to spend about $100 million in this cycle, and then they're getting 26 billion back. So every country in the world is soon going to realize, oh, take American citizens that live there, get them a tremendous amount of money, and just buy the U.S. government, right? But for corporations, they've already realized that on a massive scale, right? So, for example, in the two industries you gave, automotive. So in New Jersey, about a decade ago or so, one of the most powerful lobbies is car dealerships. So at the national level, you got pharma and you've got defense contractors, et cetera. At the local level, guys who have huge power, number one is utilities, number two is real estate, and then car dealerships are hilariously among the top, right? Because it's local businesses that are, financing the politicians at the local level. So they passed a law saying that you have to sell through dealerships. But Tesla doesn't sell through dealerships, and it was intended to bully, intimidate, and push out Tesla out of the market. They then did that in a number of different states throughout the country. So does that make any sense in a democracy? Of course not. Why do you have to sell your product through a specific vehicle or medium? You can sell it any way you like. That's the most anti-free market thing possible. Why? It was just total, utter corruption. But it's perfectly legal. The Supreme Court legalized bribery. So then what happened in that case? So then Elon came in and gave campaign contributions and reversed it. So now we're in a battle where it's an open auction, right? Different companies are buying different politicians, and then they're pretending to have debates about principles and ideas, etc. So now let's look at tech. In the beginning, Facebook was not spending any money in politics, or almost any money in politics. So what happens? They're getting hammered. They get pulled into congressional hearings, and Facebook's got fake news, and oh my God, all this trouble from Facebook. Then Facebook does the logical thing. Oh, it turns out I need to grease these sons of bitches. Okay. So then they hire a whole bunch of Republican consultants. They go grease all the Republicans and most of the corporate Democrats. And then all of a sudden, we're no longer talking about Facebook at all. And Facebook are angels. And now we've turned our attention to who? Facebook's top competitor, TikTok. Funny how that works. Okay. And by the way, then Donald Trump goes, TikTok's big, dangerous company. They're working with China. Okay. And then Jeff Yazd comes in on this cycle, part owner of TikTok. And he doesn't want TikTok banished, of course, right? So he gives Trump a couple of $1 million. Trump turns around the next day and goes, we love TikTok. TikTok's a good company, right?
So that's a big contributor to influencing what politicians say and what they think. But it's not the entire thing, right?
No, it is. It's 98%. I'll go on mainstream media and they'll be like, oh, I see what you're saying. I can see how that influences politicians about 10%. I'm like, no, it's 98%. So, and even a lot of good people think it's 50-50. Yeah. They have principles and they have money. No, they have money and this smidge of principles. That's why I wanted to clarify 98.